Hello everyone, welcome back to the table. Alright, so we are about to hop into some play for Post Captain. I left in the creaky table, makes you think you're on a creaky ship, someone pointed out, so I'm like, cool, I'll keep it. But just to show you what we're playing with, let me bring the light over. So today, this is not a historical matchup. If you want historical matchups, there's plenty of documents you can get. There's a lot of frigate action. You can check the War of 1812. You can check things like off the Barbary coast, even American frigates versus French frigates, or you can get a lot of American versus British frigates. Lots of those kinds of matchups. I haven't really seen anything that said there was individual ships of the line going at each other. Usually those were part of bigger forces. But today we're going to do the French Orient versus the HMS Victory, just because I like to have lots of dice to roll for guns. So we've got the two combatants here, and as you can see, lots of guns on each side. So who doesn't like to fire lots of guns? So that's who we'll be fighting with today. Now, I have here that deck sheet. I've got a couple deck sheets that I prepared for today. I didn't put the date or the time or weather or anything like that. What I'm going to do is some custom rules a little bit as far as the setup. Because again, it's solo play. It's not real competitive. It's just me. But I do have worked out an idea for crew assignments. That was something I talked about in the other video, just to simplify that for myself. And I did, and we'll see how it plays out today. It does give the French player a significant advantage, I think. I think normally if you play the rules from the book as is with crew assignments, the French player actually comes up short with being able to man all of the weapon systems. And the British player comes up with, even of the old system, like maybe one unused crew factor or something like that. So what I've come up with doesn't quite match the original rules, but it's much easier to track, I think. So what I've done is, with the low guns, that would be like the 36 pounders, the stuff on the lower decks, those I'm assigning as 2 crew factors. Normally it's 1 3/4. Then everything else is either like 1 1/2, 1, or a half fraction. So what I did was I just dropped all the fractions, and the light guns that normally take half a crew, I just rounded those up. Again, just to kind of balance off the fact that some of the other gun sizes, I've reduced how many crew it takes to run those. So with that in mind, then the Orient, with its required three crew factors for the basic sailing, and then 10 crew factors for the lower guns, 6 for the mid, 6 for the upper because they've got 6 cannons in those positions, 3 for the light guns because they've got light gun here, light gun here. Carronade, I think the carronade would probably fall into a larger gun set, but the carronade for this is a 36, so that probably should be 2 crew factors. So I'll probably adjust that because that's up on the upper deck, but it's carronades are huge. Oh no, it's 1 right here. I just looked right here. It says 42 carronade to 68. It's a 1. So basically, that's what I did. Is I got a crew factor for that light gun, a crew factor for there and there. So that's 3. So anyway, the math on that comes up to be about 28 crew factors. That gives them 6 surplus, which is a lot more than they have if you were to math out the crew factors normally. But I'm okay with that because I think that this will give a little bit of a buffer for taking some losses before you really have to worry about crew and doing math. This gives you a couple crew hits where you can just say, okay, you've killed off some of the unimportant whoever, not that anybody's life is unimportant, but it's a war game, So anyway, you've knocked off some of the unimportant war game people. Same thing with the British. Now the British, under the post-captain rule set of crew assignments, they did have like a quarter of a crew left over, something like that. So under the new math, if you will, they'll have 2 surplus. And again, this does kind of follow along with some of the things I've heard. Y'all can correct me, where it said that British ships didn't have as many personnel to crew them as, say, some of the other nations of the time. You know, they had a lot of ships. They had a huge navy, and so they were always pressed to find sailors. So this kind of goes with that. Got plenty of people over on the French ship, and you've got enough to run the British ship, but they had to be more careful about taking crew losses before they have to start deciding which weapon platforms don't get crewed. Yeah, so that's pretty much where I'm at. I've also got this play aid, which comes from the book. Well, it's in the book. I printed it off. This is from the PDF as well. Which I would recommend that if you get this game, get the 3-ring punched version that they send to you, 3-ring punched version, and get that simply because when you do, they also give you the PDF version access for free. Now you can just buy the PDF version, and the PDF version is like, I think, virtually the exact same price. So you might as well just get yourself the print copy, get access to the PDF, and then you got both. So that's my recommendation to you. But this has got some of the, like the crew gun box situation, which I have now changed. But it does talk about the cannon reload time that I mentioned, how to do tacking, which may or may not occur while I solo play. Also, some rules on movement that we mentioned about how, well, the one we didn't mention, I will cover though, is you check for gusts before you start for the turn. How to accelerate, how much you can accelerate based on the cells that you're using. Let's see, the trim cells, that's just the basic stuff. How many crew factors it takes for you to change. Well, if you're going to go to easy sail or full, it's how many crew factors it takes to run. Like this says 1.5. So if I wanted to go to easy sails, I would go, like for the French player, 3 times 1.5, and that's how many crew factors it would take to maintain the sails for easy. And then if I'm doing full, it would take 6 crew factors. Now, for a situation like that, since my battle cells takes 3 crew factors, if I did go to full cells, I'd have a lot more movement for the Orient. I'd go from 4 at battle and 9, but then I'd have to go 6 here, and that would use up some of my surplus. So we could go faster and still have some extra men laying around doing things. But that's just some basic stuff I wanted to show you. When we do gunnery, we'll show you the gunnery chart. Here it is, the gunnery chart, and how to do hits, possible crits, sprung mass, things like that. It's really not that difficult. One thing that I did do here, and if I zoom in, it might make it easier to see before we head over to the play area, is the original charts come in yards. Carronades over here, long guns over here, out to 2,000 yards. And in 1/1000 scale, 100 yards is 3.6 inches. If you play in what the game comes with, which is 1200, it's 100 yards is 3 inches even. So I did just off to the side, because I'm playing in 1/1000, I just went 3.6 and then just kind of doubled up based on the range. So the game in 1/1000 scale, you could measure distance out to 72 inches and try to fire, but it's pretty pointless. You can technically hit depending on the type of ship you're shooting at, but depending on the caliber of the gun, sometimes you might only be getting like rigging or a gun hit. You wouldn't be doing a whole lot of damage to the ship. So shooting out that far probably isn't very practical. I have found that most of our effective gunnery is coming in the 200 to 400 yard range. So we probably won't start very far apart from each other, which is good, because again, if you're looking at limited table space, you could easily play some one-on-one post-captain engagements on like 4x4, just so you're kind of close enough to start. Otherwise you have vast distances of ocean to cross. I mean, because a lot of times, if I've got 2 ships side by side at 2,000 yards, you could fire if you want, but you'd use up your first firing bonus. There's a initial broadside bonus. You wouldn't want to waste it on 2,000 yard shot. That's kind of crazy. you want to get much closer and take full advantage of that initial broadside at the closer range where it's much easier to hit stuff. But it can be done. But a lot of games, your ships don't start close to each other or on a broadside anyway. They're trying to travel towards each other. And so starting at 2,000 yards will take you a while to get there. But yeah, nobody's going to be shooting each other. So even though they do have ranges out that far, I really don't see a lot of people engaging at that distance. So yes, they got measurements out to 2,000 yards, but I found that most engagements are falling between this 400 and 200 yard area, or a little bit closer. All right, well, let's see what I can break as far as the rules go. And just so you know, there will be mistakes made as far as the rules. This is learning process for me to get back into it. And the game does have a lot of minutia that is easy for me to forget because there's no one here to correct me. All right, thanks. Let's get into it. All right, we're going to go to the table, look at a few things. So first of all, due to a tragic moving accident, I can't find my tripod. So all of this is going to be handheld. Sorry. So if it's shaky, yeah, sorry. So maybe if I'm a good boy, Santa will bring me a tripod. And then we'll be good with it. But my wife has put a shopping moratorium. I can't buy myself anything until after Christmas. So it's like, we'll see how it goes. All right, so first thing I did was I'm using this Sails of Glory wind tracker. I won't be using this bottom portion, but that would be a wind strength indicator. And Post Captain does have some wind strength rules, but they mostly are determining things like what sail speed you could use. If the weather's really strong, you couldn't use like full sails, things like that. So I won't be needing this bottom portion for modifying my ship movement based on wind. But it is a rule there. It's also in Sails of Glory, they have it too. Now, with this though, I rolled a die 8, and I just said north would be 0.1. And so when I rolled, so like 1, 2, 3 based on die roll. So I have my 8-sided die, and we've got the wind is blowing east. Then I did some random dice rolls to kind of follow the same principle to determine the direction of these ships and then in what corner they would be in. And it did place them kind of funkily. So what I'm going to do is kind of take what I die rolled and move the ships a little bit. So we've got the French ship was heading in a northeasterly direction, and the British was heading in a northernly direction. So instead of having them come at each other head on, they'll actually just be kind of going side by side here. Yeah, maybe not. Okay, so we're going to have a quick command decision. We'll say the HMS Victory is going from east to west. Now this is my fancy blue water cloth that I think looks almost virtually black on camera, but it's something my wife found. I've used it in some other videos, and I don't know how well people like it, but it's got, depending on how the light hits it, these little dark spots where it kind of looks like the caps of the water or whatever. So hopefully this works pretty good as a gaming cover. The other thing too is I'm filming in our room. Again, thanks to COVID and some changes, working from home and whatnot now, everything has been condensed into our bedroom. It's now my bedroom / office / game space. So yeah, thanks lockdowns. But there it is. Okay, now I'm also going to have this. This is also from Sails of Glory, but I'll be able to use this. I can set it on a table, and what's cool is it does have these hexagonal sides, so I know the wind is blowing east, so when I go to look at ships and some measurements, if I want reminders of wind angle against the ship, I just know that I can place this flat here, like this is north and the wind is blowing east, and again, because it's on a hex, I can, or octagon I suppose, hex, yeah, hex. I can just rotate it a little bit, and then I got a nice even, northeast wind, north wind. So it's actually very easy to put next to a ship, for example, and if I know the wind is blowing east, and if I have this lined up flat against the north edge of the table, I know that that's the east wind, and it's easy to tell where the wind is hitting on the ship. So just a nice little handy tracker. So that's a couple aids I'll be using, and we'll go ahead and get started. Now with the game here, I'm going to be rolling in this box. I've got these toothpicks because I can use them to represent masts, so I just left them in there. So what we'll do is grab some dice. Alright, so in a game of Post Captain, normally what's going to happen is if your ships are about 1,000 yards apart from each other or more, you could use basically like a strategic movement where the ships move long distances in a turn versus breaking your turn down into phases, and then it's basically helps you close the gap between ships a little bit better. But once they start to hit within 400 yards, you go to a tactical phase, and essentially both folks are going to roll 2 dice and roll for initiative. Now right now the ships, I've got them spaced at more than 400 apart, but what we're going to do is kind of we'll bring them a little closer, because again the idea here is we want to kind of have some combat happen. So the ships are kind of engaging on each other a little bit now, and the blue die will be for the French player initiative, and then I have a bunch of other die 12s that are not going to be nationality specific, if you will. But for initiative I did pull out a blue French, and then the British player can just use the yellow one. I think I got some red ones for the British player. I don't know. I'd have to look. Alright, well, now that it matters, I have a lot of red dice. Apparently I don't have any red die 12s. So let's see, that's a 7 for the British, 8 for the French player. So the French player is going to move first. You can actually set it up to where you can decide to move first, or you can have your opponent move. The advantage to that, like a lot of games where there's movement involved, sometimes you want to move second because you want to see where your opponent is. So even though movement is not simultaneous, firing is. So there's no real advantage to having yourself go first in terms of shooting. It just depends on if you want to maybe try to maneuver before your opponent does, try and put yourself in a good position to force them to move into a bad spot, or if the ships are pretty far apart, you might want your opponent to move first, and then you can maybe take advantage of some maneuvering that they've done. That'll be up to you to decide. For this game, I'm just going to take the initiative as rolled, where whoever rolls highest is going to move first, and then gunnery from there will be simultaneous. So the French player is going to move first. So I'll go ahead and plot out. Oh, one thing that will help with the plotting is gusts of wind. That's something else you do in the beginning turn, and it's at the beginning of the turn, not each phase. So at the beginning of the turn, each player rolls a die 12, and if they roll a 1 or a 2, they lose 1 movement factor due to wind gusts. If they roll an 11 or 12, they gain a movement factor due to wind gusts. And the idea is that it's done in secret because when you're out on the ocean looking across, you can't see how the wind is affecting that part of the ocean at that moment. So you, as the opposing captain, you don't know if the other player is getting a nice sudden gust of wind helping them along. Maybe you could tell, I don't know, but this is saying you make the roll in secret. But we'll make it in the open because we're solo play. So the British player, they both, for whatever reason, gusts of wind in their localized areas are blowing against them, and they will have -1 movement factor. So we'll go ahead and plot out how many movement factors they want to move, and then we'll start moving the ships. Alright, so in an effort to keep the playing surface clean, I'm doing a lot of the paperwork behind me on the table, and if there's paperwork that I feel like you want to look at, I'll just bring it over or take it to the table. But what I've done here in the center column of boxes for movement factors is you look at the phase. So again, Post Captain is broken down into 3 phases. There's a red, white, and blue phase. Since we're in the red phase, because the Victory had wind blowing against it, that puts its battle sail speed at 6 minus 1 is a 5. So they're going to go ahead and move all 5 of their movement factors. We also did the same with the French. However, their battle sail speed is 4 minus 1 because wind's blowing against them. They'll have 3 movement factors to spend. Yeah, that's not much. Now, that's where these tools will come in handy. And I think this is what some folks wanted to see, is how do we determine, if you're fast, medium, or slow. So first things first, since we know the wind is blowing east, I'm going to put my little handy-dandy thing next to the ship. What you want to do is determine if the wind is hitting the larboard side, larboard, I'll just say port, larboard, I'm going to get used to saying that, larboard, I'll say larboard side, or is it hitting the starboard side? Since we know that the wind is hitting on the larboard side, based on the little wind gauge there, what I do is I flip this to the red side. And again, it can be on any side facing the ship. And what you're going to do is just align that arrow. Let's see if I can do this as a top down. And I'm just going to rotate until the arrow here, matches, is in line. And what you do is you look to see if the F or M, which of these is the wind, or which of those little pies is mostly hitting the ship. I mean, one could argue the F or the M. So what it says in the rules is if there's question as to which is hitting the ship more, medium or fast, then go with the slower speed. So it's really hard to say how someone would want to do that. I mean, if it was a little bit off, you could say that was definitely fast. If it was a little bit more, you could definitely say medium at that point. Or if you're going towards the wind a little bit. But since it's kind of like on the line, we'll just say it's going medium. Alright, now he's looking, and if you look at your stick and find the M side, you can see 3 isn't that far. We probably don't need to make a turn for broadside yet because we do want to get closer. So I'm going to take this ruler, line it up on the back side, and just move till my back of the ship is at the 3. And now I have moved 3 movement factors. That easy. And I'll tell you, that's why I like kind of this free flow system they have. Instead of plotting everything ahead, it gives captains kind of a chance to see and react throughout the turn to see what their opponent is doing. So I think that's kind of cool. So now the British player can go, oh, okay, they're coming right at us. How do I want to meet that engagement? Do I keep going forward? They're at an angle, so I'm not quite crossing the T. So do I want to turn into them, and then we can do passing broadsides? What would you like to do? So the British player has 5 movement points to spend. Now we got to check to see how he's doing on the wind. Now I'll tell you what, we've already made a mistake. Well, not quite. Oh yeah, because you got to line this up with the bow. Well, first of all, you got to decide, is the wind hitting larboard or starboard? If it's coming straight on, at this point, I don't think it really matters, because it's going to be, I should not have put the ship at that angle. So to be fair, because I wasn't thinking when I just did a random placement, what I should do is probably face them. I hate to say it because it's automatically like broadside. So let's do that. Not quite automatically broadside, but okay. So now that we know that the wind is hitting them on their starboard side, what we're going to do is rotate. Yeah, so we just put that straight on. And again, we'd be looking to see if it's medium speed or slow. And again, since if this was definitely on the M, I could say it's medium, but since it's kind of split between slow and medium, you take the penalty. They're moving slow. So if they want to move quicker, they'll have to turn a little bit. So we're going to move our 5. So we're going to find slow. And as you can see, even though it says 5 on there, they're not going to move much. You know, they moved, but it's not like they moved a whole bunch. So, okay, that would be one phase. Then, if we had any gunnery or anything like that, you know, I could place this on there just to see, and it's, I mean, not even close. So we won't worry about gunnery. But our captains can now make some decisions like how many movement factors. Now, really, probably isn't going to change between the 5 and the 3, and you don't check for gust of wind until the next turn. But the victory captain might decide, well, do I maybe put some backing sails, which would drop my speed by 2, or do I want to keep, you know, little things like that. So what I'm going to do is put this camera on the charger for a little bit and just write down what their next movement factors will be, and then we'll come back and move. Alright, just to keep things simple, if you can see that, we're going to maintain a 5 movement factors for the British, 3 for the French player. French player maintains their initiative throughout the entire turn, so they're going to go ahead. They've made the decision to keep going forward. Now we could, as we move along, continually check the wind to make sure that we're still on the medium movement, but because you never know, as I bump things, maybe. But see now, for some reason, even though all I did was move forward, you would think there'd be consistency, but it looks like, oh, because I did the wrong side. Ooh, okay. Never mind. I was like, how did I go from medium to slow? But, yeah, so we're still on a medium. I don't know. Part of me is arguing, you could almost say, more of the fast is on the ship at that point. You know, just slight granularities and turning. Because, see, even though I've got this wind gauge set to where it is definitely east or northeast, you know, that's pretty static. These aren't on hexes, so, I mean, you could rotate as little as you want when making, you know, your moves. You could just change ever so slightly, and that would change your angle of wind on the ship. So probably what we'll do is, if we were going to turn, for instance, to pick up speed, we would be on the medium, and anything in that blue, you don't have to move forward minimum distance. First-rate ships, I think they move, I forget what it was. Like, they take half of the movement factors in forward movement before they can turn. And since this ship is only moving like 3, they would have to move like 1.5. Yeah, they're not gonna have. They don't get much maneuvering points. So I mean, I could rotate this ship here just a little bit, still be within that safe blue, and still be able to move forward. Now the problem is with moving and turning like this on this is what I do is I line up so it's at 90 degree to the ship. I just put it on the main mast. That would be half a movement factor. That's a whole movement factor. So what you want to do is try to keep track of how many moves. And what I do is I do it by the half. So I would say, for simplicity, you know, like he's going to move half a movement point towards the British ship, because on his next turn, when he checks for speed, then the wind will be with him. But at the moment, due to wind and inertia and whatnot, he's just going to still move those 3 on the M. But we moved half a factor, so really I'm only going to move 2.5 on the M. And the reason why I keep those half factors is because half a factor is marked on the movement gauge for just such a purpose. So we know that normally I had 3 movement factors. I rotated half, so that leaves me with 2.5. So I'm going to go 1, 2.5. There. So, I mean, you theoretically, analogous, could rotate your ship as much as you wanted in there, but I figured just for simplicity's sakes, if you want to just check it in half movement factor increments, even on the other speeds, then at least you know, okay, I moved half. You don't have to worry about, well, did I move just a quarter? Just set some little limitation for yourself, again, just to help keep all the math as simple as possible. Alright, so that still doesn't move our French ship very far forward at all. Then the British player, because as this is happening real time, he's deciding, what do I want to do? Sacre bleu! So French. He's going to go ahead and start his turns towards the French player to bring broadsides. So again, I think we were saying that he's slow. Due to the wind coming right there, he is slow. The sails can't quite rotate enough to catch a good gust of wind. So what is that, a beam? So do I want to turn now? It's possible that I could turn right now. So if I line that up there so that it's about 90 degrees, and then let's get a top-down angle on that. So we'll say it's a gentle turn. Now, again, because I'm turning within the allowed radius of the blue, I don't have to do any forward momentum before I turn. That's considered like no, I don't know what they would call that, but it's like a minimal turn. They had a term for it in general quarters. I forget what it was, but it's like a minor course correction or something like that. So when you're doing minor course corrections, you can just turn. Now I've moved 2 movement factors for my minor course correction, and that means I've got 3 movement left on slow because I had 5. Alright, so we're going to put this here towards the back and just come forward 3. Normally I would hold that with both hands, but yep, I don't have a tripod, so I'll be bumping figures. Okay, and that's how we are at the end of the white phase. So we'll write down the blue phase. Now see, at this point I could then start to say, okay, when are they going to meet? This is those old school programs, you know, the math problems where it's like if train A leaves at this speed and train B leaves at this speed, what speed are they going to be? Yeah, we might continue to be slow, because see, the problem is with the British ship turning the way they are, and yeah, that's as much as I can possibly turn without performing attack. So I think the British player is just going to go straight. So what he has to decide then based on that is, do I want to go my full 5 on slow versus the potentially now fast for the French? Is that going to put them close to a broadsides, or will they kind of sail past each other? See, and this is one reason why the game breaks down into 3 phases, is because instead of one full turn of movement, like in other games where you have to plot all that out and guess, this gives you a chance to kind of see the action unfold as the ships get closer to each other. Then you as the captain can kind of decide a little bit better how to approach the enemy. You don't have to really think far ahead. Okay, so we'll be right back. Alright, well, just a quick update. What I did a command decision where, since the ships were getting pretty close to each other, I thought, you know what, I'm going to just move these to the table where I film my board game, so you get a top-down view, and then I can leave my battery plugged in on the camera, because apparently my stuff is just old. The battery dies quick, it's terrible, so I'll leave it plugged in. And as I was moving, I thought I would show you this. So a while ago, I did a video. I got the Black Seas version of the HMS Victory. And yeah, so what happened here, briefly, is it was up on display. And one morning, I went out and it was on the floor. And it was all bent, mangled horribly because it's resin with the pewter masts and it's a lot of weight that fell. And so basically, it's fairly ruined. It was scrunched horribly, horribly bad. My son wanted to know, why I was upset. I guess I was pretty bummed and depressed about it, and I showed him what happened. And what he did for me, while I was not aware of, he took it and spent time trying to bend the masts and things back so that it was somewhat in a playable shape. And he'll never watch this video, and I thanked him for that, but I don't think he'll ever truly understand how touching that was for him to do for me. Even though I'm probably not going to play with this ever again, or if I do, it's going to be the damaged, Victory. Did I say Constitution? I meant Victory. But this is HMS Victory. And yeah, so, but if I'm dead and my son subscribes to my channel at some point and watches this, thank you, son. That was very touching that you tried to do that for me. I do super appreciate that. This thing it got mangled bad. But anyway, I just thought I'd show that to you because it was here on the table as I was moving stuff around. So the Victory, yeah, and I think that's one reason why I went with the Age of Sails. I have dropped one of these, and nothing happened because they're plastic. It was great. Only problem is with this angle, you don't get a whole lot of side view to see these ships. I mean, maybe if I come back and then we rotate this down a bit, but then it's kind of all weird. Let me see if I can twist the camera angle so you get maybe a side view a little bit from the front. Yeah, let's try that for you guys. Hold on. Alright, well, we're going to try this angle out. I'm not able to get my camera exactly how I had it once before, I think when I was playing Commands and Colors. I don't know how I rigged it up, but I was able to kind of get a behind the view kind of a thing. This isn't quite what I had in mind as far as for myself, but since I don't have my tripod, I just figured this might look a little bit better than a straight top-down. Top-down view is great for board games, but for miniatures, I think just a little bit of a side angle will be good. Alright, now with that in mind, I'm going to try not to bump tables and stuff. I've got the logs here, which we were just starting the blue phase when I moved over. The French player had initiative, so they're going to move their 3. They had just done some slight turns towards each other, the minor course corrections, but I think for this phase they were just going to go straight. And I might not have transferred them over exactly from the other play area to here, so it might be slightly off. But I do get to check again, because the wind was blowing east, and if I did this right... Boy, I thought I had turned them. Where did he need to go? Oh, because he's on this side. I thought I had turned them. Yeah, I thought I had turned the French player a little bit more so that it would definitely be on the fast side that the wind was hitting. More on the fast. And then I had turned, I know the British had turned to where they would not be able to turn any closer to the wind. Like they had set themselves up as close as they could get, so that the two ships now will be almost dead on for some kind of broadside action. Now they can't turn any more this way simply because they would be into the wind. They would be in, definitely in irons. They would not be moving very fast at all. They would need a tack to go any further. And the French player can maneuver a lot more. The French player could probably move in and then straighten out a little bit, but with so few movement points, not really likely going to happen. However, the French player is positioned, so now they're moving with the F for fast. So we're going to look at our fast stick. And again, it's only 3 movement points, but on the fast side, it does open them up just a little bit more. If they had 6 or 7 movement points, they'd be flying. Now, the British player is moving at 5, But on the slow scale, and you can see those numbers are scrunched a lot closer together. So his 5 is not going to be that much. So I'm going to line that up, hold the ship so I don't move it much. And let's see if y'all can even see that a little bit. You can kind of see it here. Some top down would be good. Oh, yeah, you know, it is what it is. So here we go, 5. That's still a pretty good chunk of movement, but still not enough for broadside. See, and now this is like a really good example of why when the ships are 1,000 or more yards apart, you do that strategic move so they can, you know, just maybe spend one turn closing the gap. You know, you just move all the movement because we're still not in range. But that's why I didn't mind bringing this to the small table, because in order for them to do combat, I really didn't want to spend a game where I spent 3 game turns of them just closing the distance. Now they're about ready to close the gap. And if you look at the turn track, there's also now we would have the weather phase, tactical phases, that's done. We would check rigging and repair, and then a command phase for like morale and stuff like that. So overall, see, that's the thing, overall the game in theory is not that difficult. It's just that it is a game of details. So you then start at some point facing the minutia of, you know, rolls to check for rigging and masts breaking and all these different things that until I play the game enough, I'm not going to remember all of that. I remember just enough that we can move and shoot at each other. All right, but this would be the start of a new turn. Now every 10 game turns you would check to see if the weather changes, like wind direction, but we're not even close to that. However, we are able to check to see if the gusts of wind favor our combatants. So we rolled it 1 again for the French player, so localized gust is still blowing against him, but the British player rolled a 12, and so they're going to get a boost. But that might not be what the British player wants. So this is where we would take a moment to plot out. So the French player is still moving at 3. You probably can't see the paper where I'm writing that very well. But that would actually give the British player a grand total of 7 movement points. Now they're moving kind of slow, but the French player is coming at them. I could apply some backing sails. So I'm just going to put a 1 here for 1 backing sails worth of movement. And I'm going to give myself 5. I'm going to stay at 5. So we are on a new turn, and we're in the red phase of the new turn. So I'm going to write a 5 there. So the wind is in our favor, but we don't want to overshoot, if you will, the French player. We want to make sure we get lined up with them for broadsides. Now, I should roll for initiative too. I should have done that first, but I kind of figured that's what I would do for movement points. So this time, the British player would move first. Again, because these folks are just pulling up alongside each other, that might not matter too much. Now, he would still be slow. They didn't turn or anything, so they're still on slow. So I'm going to line this up, and we're going to move him 5. That's right about the 5 movement factors. And if we had planned better, maybe the French player would have only done like 2. But they're now on fast. So these two might pass each other. 1, 2, 3. Well then, that is interesting. So if I place the broadside, oh, you know what? I'd say that's good. Basically what they were saying is if more than 50% of your ship, like there's a nice little line to help here, but there's like a rule of 50%. So essentially, if 50% of my guns would miss the ship, I would be either shooting with like just my 4 guns or my aft. But since if I line that up approximately where the middle mast is, that's a broadside. So they are passing each other, and as they passed, and the French player, that's easily still good. What's nice is the Sails of Glory has little markers on the base. It's not exactly where the middle mast is, but if you line up with the center red dot, it's pretty close to the center. That's kind of why I left that in. I should put the one back in for HMS Victory. But anyhow, they're going to fire broadsides. Yay! So combat. Let's see how combat works, shall we? What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the ship layouts. Now I tell you, when you compare this to say wooden ships and Iron Men, where you just look and see how many total gun factors you have, which represents the weight of fire that you're bringing, it's just easy to count up. Okay, I've got like 10 gun factors. You roll on your charts, you're good. Here, it is a little more complicated because you have several gun calibers that you're working with. I don't know if caliber is exactly the right word for age of sail, but I've got 36-pound guns, 24-pound guns, 12-pound guns, and 8-pound guns, and some carronades for the Orient. And then the Victory has similarly armed 32, 24, 12, and a 68-pound carronade. Now, what you would do is, since we'll go with the Orient first. Remember, gunnery is simultaneous. You know, if one guy says I'm going to fire, the other guy can fire or not, whatever. But what we're going to do is add up how many guns we have. So first we would be checking, say, my 36-pounders. So that's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I know, based on that, I'm going to be rolling 5 die 12. So I've got 12-sided dice. But now what I got to do is decide distance and look at my gunnery chart to see what numbers I need to roll. Now on the ruler that you can print out, it does have range. And if you didn't have bases and you're just playing off the ships, the only problem with the bases is if the two ships get really close to each other, that might be close to 25 yards. These are kind of big bases, but for normal measuring, what I do in all my Age of Sails that I've done is we measured from center mast to center mast of the other ship. And here we can see that that is about 160 some yards. I'm not very good at holding that. So it's half between one, let's see, 25 and then we take half of 25 would be about 12. So yeah, we're about at like 162 yards from each other. That's pretty close. So what we would do is look at our handy dandy gunnery chart, which I have right over here. And I hope you can see this. I just bumped the Victory there. Yeah, you can't see that. Alright, so what we're going to do is just shift these two ships back to make a little bit of space here. And see if you can see gunnery. Alright, and I know the angle isn't so good, so I'll try and explain this to you. But basically what you're going to do is determine the range. So I know that it's about 162 yards. I don't have to be that specific because the range bands go from 100 to 200 to 400. So at 162 yards, that is more than 100, less than 200. So their initial shots will be using the 200 yard range band. So you always go up a band, right? Because I'm not within 100, but not quite 200, but we roll on to 200. Then you would have some modifiers like initial broadside, is your crew elite, is your crew a green, are you in full sails and force 3 plus winds? So there's some things that could modify up or down your range band. But we're going to say it's initial sail or initial broadsides. So we're going to go from 200 and we're going to roll on the 100. Okay, but now what number do I need? Well, up here in the upper right hand corner, it has the target ship. 1st to 3rd rates, 4th to 5th rates, 6th, and unrated. So I know I'm shooting at a 1st rate, so I'm looking for my 36-pound guns and against a 1st rate, and I just come down to that 100 range band because we know that even though it's 200, it's the initial broadside, so they're aimed and motivated, ready to go. So I'm going to roll 5 dice, and I score a hit on any of those that roll between 1 and 4. So I think I could probably just roll right here. I don't need the box. So if I shake up the dice, and we just kind of drop them. We're going to look to see anything that's within that 1 through 4. All right, so we've got 3, 3, 5, 6, 8. So this is where those markers I mentioned before, since these are the 36 pounders, just for visual splashage, I'm going to use the bigger ones, so I know that I've got 2 hits. Now, beyond that, the size of the gun doesn't matter, just for that initial hit. I know if you're used to playing general quarters, you would still need to track the like the penetration value of the gun. That way when you roll on hit locations, you know, versus armored turrets or things like that. But here, basically, just the fact that the size of your gun against the target type at that range and that number needed takes all of that into consideration. So each gun box was about 3 cannons. So I just fired about 15 36-pound guns, and a couple of them did enough damage that we're going to roll on the damage chart. So that easy. But then you're going to do the same thing for the other guns you have. So the Orient has 6 24-pound guns on the larboard. Oh no, they're on the starboard side. So I'm going to take all 6, but do the same thing, right? I got to go 24-pound guns, and at 100 yards, they're going to damage on any rolls of 1 through 3. 1. Everything else. Now that doesn't mean they missed. I mean, that could be, you know, cannons that did miss, or some that hit but didn't penetrate, or whatever the case may be, because they're smaller. So I'm going to put a smaller splash. Again, it doesn't really matter. It's just for visual. Just keeping track of how many hits there were. Then the Orient also has on their little diagram the upper guns, which are 12-pounders, and it's got 6 of those as well. So 12-pounders, I'm hitting on 1s. So I'm going to roll all my dice and any 1s. Now if this was against frigates, we'd probably be doing a lot more damage. For example, if I was shooting my 36-pounders against a 5th rate, like a frigate, I would be using this. I'd have to come over here, boom, and then come down. Ooh, I'd be hitting on 1 through 8s. So yeah, I would be devastating smaller ships. Okay, so here we go. I got to get some 1s. Not a single one. Got a couple of 2s. Came really close, but nope, no cigar. And then finally there would be the light guns, which are for the Orient, they're like 8-pounders. They're hitting on a half, which means you roll half your dice and then you hit 1s and you round down. So with my light guns, I've only got 2, technically 2 light guns. So I'd be rolling 1 die, rolled a 3. So the light guns didn't do anything. But I do got the 1 carronade. And again, I'm going to fire the carronades. But their range is different. They have a special range band over here for carronades. So at 100, because I'm rolling on the 100, let's see, what did I say? It was 200, but initials to the 100. And that carronade is, I forgot what we said it was, a 36-pounder equivalent. So it's still hitting on 1 through 3. So the carronade misses. Alright, so that's all the gunnery. Now if you had, yeah, that's it. So kind of fun there, rolling some dice. If you like to roll dice, you know, comparatively to some other games, you might only roll like 2 dice 6. With Wooden Ships and Iron Men, you just roll 1 dice 6. I sometimes like multiple dice because I think that gives you a little bit of a bell curve, kind of flattens out some probabilities. But you know, to each their own. I'm just showing how Post Captain does this. But now we're going to do the same thing for the Victory. Because the Victory, because we're simultaneous firing, I'm going to check and see what I've got here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 guns on the starboard side as well. Okay, cool. Yeah, they're not going alongside each other, so it's starboard side. But anyway, he's got 5 32-pound guns. So he's rolling on that same chart, and he's hitting on 1 through 4s. And he's only got 5, so I'll take the blue one out. Let's see if he's any luckier. He scored 2 hits out of that initial bunch. And again, we'll put the... Oh, you know what? I got my splashes backwards. Thanks for pointing that out. So the victory fires, and the victory scored 2 splashes with the big ones. Boom. Then has 5 of the 24 pounders. 24 pounder, hitting on 1 through 3s. Nothing. Uh-oh. Then it's got some 12 pounders, hitting on 1s. Now, it actually has 7 of those. So here's 6, and I'll just re-roll like a couple of misses. So it's actually got 7 of those 12 pounders, but they're hitting on 1s. None of those hit, so we'll just roll a 3 and 11. None of those hit. Then it has 1 68-pound carronade. Now, here's the problem with the victory. So when the carronade is in a parentheses like that, that means basically there's 1 of them. It counts as like firing a single gun. So you would roll half your dice round 1. So it's like I'm rolling 1 die 12 to see what it does. So at 100, I'm going to go all the way across for a 68-pound carronade. It hits on a 1 through 6. Well, okay, it does damage on a 1 die 6. So there's a chance. Well, okay, sorry. It does damage on a die 12, but on 1 through 6. So I have like a 50% chance of causing some damage with this one lone carronade up there. So I roll it and roll a 3. So because that's another 68-pounder, boom. Again, the splash size markers don't indicate anything. Basically, all I've done is I've seen that the shots have caused damage. But now we get to see specifically what damage. And this is the part that some people really enjoy on the general quarters, and I think it's just as good on post captain. It's actually probably simpler, but you still have a cannon damage chart, and I'm putting this as close to the ships here. Basically, it's the same as you would do in, say, like general quarters. You're going to roll your, well, what I should have done, and I did forget this completely, I just got caught up in things. One thing you can do is decide, are you shooting down towards the hull more or shooting up more towards the rigging? And they have 2 separate columns to represent that. If you're shooting high, you have chances, some greater chances of hitting rigging. And if you're shooting low, then they just have like a standard hit table, if you will. Now, the hit table for cannon damage kind of comes across are your first rates through 4th rate ships, 5th rates, 6th rates, merchant. So you basically take the type of ship you're shooting at, roll a die 12 for each point of damage, and that lets you know what you've damaged. So because the French fired first, we'll go ahead and just say we damaged the, here's what happens to the HMS Victory. So I'll just line those up. 2, 2, and a 12. So we did low. So a 2 on the low would be a hull. I got 2 of those, so I'm going to mark off 2 hull hits. 4, where did I put my little pencil? Here it is. I'm going to mark off 2 hull hits for the victory. So there's 1. And I'm putting an X. You can take half hits, which you would just put a half slash, and half hits can accumulate to full hits and whatnot. But you don't suffer the full point of damage, or the full damage, if you will, until you have got an X in there. Alright, so anywho, we've got some damage on the victory. Now we did roll a 12. That is a critical hit. So one of those shots has done something really cool. Let's see. Critical hit table. I rolled a 12. Oh, that's swell. This might be a short game. It says, fire. Abandon if can't extinguish in 4 game turns. So during my repair phase, I can make some rolls to see if we extinguish the fire. Well then, okay. Nice. Alright, we'll leave it at that. Yeah, I'll have to double check, because I think there's also going to be some additional hull damage for fire too if you don't put the fire out. And I don't remember if there was a, oops, bump the camera down here, if there was a fire. I'll look that up in the rule book here in a minute. We'll check out a fire. But just so you know, we're on fire. I am going to put, I do have something for that. I've got myself a little fire token. So we know the victory is now on fire. Alright. But we're going to return favor now and see what we have done to the French ship. So that's some things we did to the victory. We did 2 hull hits and caused a fire. Nice. Alright, now we're going to take a look at the cannon CRT table. Here's what happened to the French. Well, a slightly different. We have here a hull hit, an 11, which is, oh, we got a Marine. Uh-oh. Yeah, so this game also has, I haven't tried them myself yet, but I'm told very complicated rules for boarding parties. Marines also can be used for firing volleys across at opponent ships. So Marines are pretty cool. But we did lose a Marine. In the long scheme of things, because I don't do boarding yet, that doesn't hurt the French at all. But they did take a hull hit, which I've got. Oh, I'm crossing off on the wrong ship. I was like, why is there hull damage? Here we go. They have a complement of Marines. Now, one thing is, if you are playing with the full rules for your crew and how they fulfill gun positions, gun crews, Marines can fill half of a crew. So really, if you find yourself in a pinch, you can start using your Marines to fill in crew factors for gunnery. Not for sailing, but for gunnery. Because they're not trained, that's why it would take like two Marines to give you 1 full crew factor for gunnery. Just an FYI. So we've just got rid of some backup gunners. But then we had a hull hit, so I'll mark off my 1 hull hit there. And there was a crit. So we're going to roll the blue for the crit. Sacre bleu. And it's a 1. Well, that's nothing. It says anchor. Something about spring. I'll look that up. I'm sure that might be important. But we lost an anchor. And again, maybe if this was some kind of campaign game, that would mean something. But honestly, that does nothing. So the French players came out virtually unscathed in that. But the victory, they got whacked pretty good. So I'm just going to stick these markers back so I don't lose them. Oh, bummer. Okay. Well, the table is starting to clutter up. Now, one thing, though, that you can do as I bump the camera, oh, dang, sorry, guys, is, of course, I could have put this down at the time that we rolled, but I'm going to put that there. So they fired. Yes, I love the big puff. So there you go, guys. So now we got, that's probably an unrealistic amount of smoke, but anyhow. And then we just want to keep track of the fire. Don't lose the fire token and all that smoke. Alright, that's the gunnery. So the only thing left to do, and I'll move this cannon chart out of the way. Got to clean up the gaming space a little bit so it looks like the ocean again. Is you have to mark off how many phases for reloading. Now, according to our game aid that we have here, the French players, where was it? French takes 3 tactical phases to reload. You can't see it here. I'm trying to fit it on at this camera angle. But anyway, I got a cannon reload time chart right here. American and British take 2 tactical phases to reload. French take 3. Well, Danish, French, Dutch, and Spanish each take 3 tactical phases. The Moors and the Turks take 4. So to represent that on our handy-dandy table, what I'm going to do is over here there's spots for larboard and starboard. since both of these were on their starboard sides, since we fired in the red phase, because I just simply looked to where we last moved. After we moved, we fired. So we fired in the red phase. So what I'm going to do for the French player is put an X in the white phase, an X in the blue phase, and then an X in the red phase. That would be 3 phases of movement before I could fire again. So as we advance through the phases, I know I can't fire off my starboard side for 3 phases. So easily tracked. Easy. In fact, if you were playing with like the double shots and chain shots, things like that, you could even just put like a C or something in there to represent the type of shot that you're loading. Very easy to track. Then the victory is going to take 2 phases. So again, we fired in the red phase. So I'm going to mark off a white phase and a blue phase. So that does give the British player a slight advantage when it comes to gunnery. So if these 2 ships were just to circle each other and continue to pound away at one another, bam, the victory would eventually outgun their competitor. Alright, so after that's all done, we would check for rigging and repair. Generally, repairs and things like that happen on the next turn, not on the turn where those things just happen. So depending on your damage, you might want to make a note of that, like when you could start making your rigging checks and things. And I'll tell you, they have here an extended task list. And the reason I was looking this over is because, like, when I played with my son, we broke the top gallant mast off of the Victory. And it says here to, let's see, there's replace a sail, there was replace upper mast. Takes 1 hour. So this is saying minimum duration in game turns. Well, turns are 3 minutes. So some things take 5 game turns. That'd be like 15 minutes of real life time. Okay, that's no problem. But 1 hour, that's 60 minutes. That'd be like 20 game turns to repair a mast. I don't think I would play this for 20 turns. You know, like this has, if I got a real dedicated player, we can go out to 27 turns. So depending on when you broke a mast, you're not repairing a mast. So there's a lot of things here that take a lot of game time to do that you're probably not going to do in a standard game. Not going to happen. But what you can do as far as repairs, if I remember without reading back to the book, it does mention here you can repair rigging. So you can repair 2 rigging boxes or 1 rigging box and do a repair. So again, if I had enough game time to do a big repair, I could. But I think you can also repair hull hits. So depending on the damage you took, I could do, well, it says 2. Let me see. Use rigging. Hold on. Repair phase. Attempt to fix 2 rigging boxes or 1 rigging box and finish 1 other repair task. It says 1 other repair task. So I think I could repair like 1 hull box. But you could repair up to 2 rigging or 1 rigging in a hull. The Victory, they're going to try and put a fire out and repair a hull hit. So that's where I'm going to pause this and see what fire does. Alright, I was just refreshing myself on fire and repair. So first of all, what it says for the fire, and if you got the book, it's on in section 1-16, I guess the basic rules, page 16, and it's section, oh, I just lost it. Oh, it's in section 6.3 under critical hits, fire. Fire aboard the target ship illuminates her at night. Place a red post-it or fire marker alongside her. If the fire is not extinguished within 4 repair phases, her crew must abandon her. You're going to cast a die 12 each succeeding game turn to determine when her gunpowder explodes, destroying her. On game turn 1, it's a 1. Game turn 2, it's a 1 through a 2. So each succeeding turn, the number increments by 1. So on my 4th turn of trying to put out the fire, the ship explodes on a 1 through 4. And then it has rules if it does explode. So all craft within 200 yards are also damaged. Roll die 12, yada yada. Now, I know it says fire here, but if I'm on the 4th turn and I roll a 5, I wonder if that just means the ship burns down. It didn't explode. So there's a chance your ship could explode or just burn and sink. So that's cool. Now for the repair, It is, you get 2 repair rolls, 2 rigging or 1 rigging and 1 other repair. So if you don't have any rigging hits, you're going to get 1 repair. And putting out a fire is one of those rolls. So I wouldn't be able to try to put out the fire and repair the hole because people are running crazy trying to put out the fire. To do repairs, you're going to assign a crew factor to each repair you want. So if you did want to repair 2 rigging, you could. It would just take 2 of your crew factors. And with our ships, well, I have that put away. But, you know, you have nothing to look at except hear me talk. So, yeah, just enjoy the ship picture there. But because my ships did have some spare crew, doing some of these basic tasks would be simple. However, if I was to start taking some crew damage, then I might want to consider, you know, who's firing, who's not firing, things like that. And you don't start making checks until the next subsequent turn, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. Now, with that in mind, I was reading some rules they got here. I don't have those counters. Oh, that was something else. Something else caught my attention. All right, but so here's the thing. There were some things we didn't get to this time around. I realized this, when it's all said and done, this is probably a rather lengthy video. I bumped the camera again. Sorry, guys. This is probably still kind of lengthy, and it might not seem like we did much. Technically, no. But just for time's sake, I spent a lot of time just kind of talking and explaining things. I haven't played this with a friend yet. This has all just been me. I played a little bit with my son, but he gets bored real easily. So I've not really played this through to a conclusion of where a ship has sunk. However, based on what you're seeing, ships of the line could probably take a pounding for a while. Frigates might not be as battle hardy. So take it for what you will as far as a solo game. I still think it would be pretty good solo. I just wish I had my full gaming table set up, and maybe I will continue playing solo. The only problem is playing Age of Sail solo for me is the fact that there's no surprises, right? When you play against an opponent, like when I play against my son, I don't know what he's going to do as far as movement. You know, what's the next thing that he does? I don't know. Maybe he'll move, you know, to the left or the right. Maybe he'll tack. Maybe he'll do a wearing. There's a lot of things that, you know, would be a surprise. Here, there's no surprise. So yes, I'm playing an Age of Sail game, and we're slugging it out, and we're seeing where all the individual cannon shots are hitting, and all of that's pretty cool. But as a solo experience, it's like, I don't know, it's kind of missing something. I'm not sure. Maybe, I'll tell you what, this has been a sample of like Post Captain. I know someone mentioned they play Fire She Bears. I don't know if that would give a better solo experience. I don't know. I know with the Sails of Glory, which is probably why I might actually stick to playing that one, is one, the rules are a little bit easier. It still takes into account broken masts, sailing in irons and tacking, and like all of those things are there. They're just kind of done a little differently. The only thing with Sails of Glory that kind of I'm missing is a differential between starboard guns and larboard guns. Larboard guns and starboard guns. Basically, you have one set of gunnery factors, and as your ship takes damage, that affects gunnery overall for the ship. And I think in the rules it was saying it's more than just guns that are being destroyed, but it's the overall integrity, the ship integrity to sustain combat that's being affected. I know some people really like this, to where you've got that detail of it's my starboard side and my larboard side, and so when that's happening, you know, I can maybe eventually position my ship to where I'm now using my larboard side. Like if I lose all my starboard capability, I can still swing around and be shooting out my larboard side, which, you know, you don't have that with Sails of Glory. But the thing is, with Sails of Glory, they have an app that runs your opponent's ship completely as a solo, and it takes, I don't know what the algorithm is, but it kind of takes the play cards and your position on the table in relation to your enemy ship, and it says play this maneuver card. Now I know this is about Post Captain, so I'm not going to talk much more about other Sail games, but I do like Post Captain. I think that as I get more experience, the gameplay will go better. I'll have a better time following up with like critical hits and broken masts and different things like that. But I think it might shine better with like 2 people. As a solo game, I'm not so sure, but I still think it's an amazing set of rules. I love the phases. I love the, I don't know if I would call it simple, but I really think this is an ingenious and easy way to plot movement, or to determine one, how's the wind. I think maybe that might be one thing, but this is like with all those games where you're trying to figure out how the wind is hitting against the ship. This one is the most easy, I think. Just wind, direction, put it up against the side of the ship, and you know right away, is it fast, medium, or slow. Allows for 100% analogous movement of your ship, or analogous, however you say that, analog movement. So it's not based on very rigid hexes, but it gives you complete freedom to position your ship against other folks, and then just take a quick second to determine how the wind is there. And you got your simple turn gauges, just move a little bit, there you go, done move, based on the speed. So there's a lot of things that are great and quick play about the game. So overall, I will continue on with Post Captain, and I'm still looking for a nice solo set of rules for Age of Sail. Maybe I might have to go to a board game. I don't know, because I know Wooden Ships and Iron Men is a board game, and I know there's a lot of people, I say a lot, I don't know, I see people talk about flying colors from GMT games, but they also say that's probably very, very simplified. But you can do lines of ships. See, maybe the problem is doing a solo isn't exciting. Maybe as a solo player I could run 2 ships, run 2 British against 2 French, and have them duke it out, I don't know, we'll see. But I think that we'll just kind of cut the video there. Hopefully this gives you a little bit idea of the game flow for Post Captain. Hopefully you found that enjoyable. If you do want to see more Age of Sail gaming, because this, I don't know, you might be disappointed in what you got out of this. But if you want to see more and longer, I mean, I could certainly set this up, do like a couple game turns, come back another day, do another 2 game turns, like maybe play out a full game. So maybe this is more of like a test run. What do you all think of Age of Sails? Do you want to see more Post Captain? Do you want me to go back to Sails of Glory? I have some Sails of Glory videos up where I did a little bit of gameplay there. And Sails of Glory plays on a similar size table. So I wouldn't have to change much here at all. I just had to figure out how to keep the cats off of this nice fancy water. Alright, but I'll leave it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. And again, if you've watched the video all the way through, I salute you. Thank you for that support. And if you have any good recommendations for games that you play as far as Age of Sail, so I've already had Fire As She Bears, and that's probably the only recommendation I've had so far. Some I mentioned, like Flying Colors, Wood Ships, Iron Men. But if you have other miniature sets you like to do, I know there's stuff by Langdon. Problem is, if you've got some free rule sets on the internet, that would be great to check out, because again, I'm on a shopping moratorium right now. So if you have something that you want me to try out that requires purchase, that might be a while. So for now, you might be stuck watching some more Sails of Glory or Post Captain if that's what you guys are interested in. Alright, thanks a lot. Bye.